Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. My name's Steve Avlacher, and I'll be discussing security frameworks and their importance to businesses. I'm going to start by saying that data breaches are no longer news. It's become a fact of life, just like drinking water. Unfortunately, data breaches are not the only security headaches companies have to contend with. Almost every company that relies on information technology faces both external and internal threats to the security of their IT infrastructure. The good news, though, is that companies can manage their IT security risk and reduce vulnerabilities by adopting and implementing industry recommended practices in the form of a security framework. So, what exactly is a security framework? A framework is basically a blueprint for building an information security program in order to manage risk and reduce vulnerabilities. One of the challenges companies face in the choice of an appropriate framework is the fact that there are so many security frameworks available, and this is and choosing an appropriate framework is definitely a challenge for most companies. During the course of this video, I will analyze a couple of popular frameworks and recommend a general framework that will best fit the security needs of a large organization. The frameworks I'll be talking about are the ISO 2701, the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, and I'll also be talking about the SANS 20 Critical Security Controls. So let's start off with the ISO 27001 framework. That's the ISO 27001 framework is the granddaddy of all security frameworks. It's probably the most recognizable security standard, as it's been around for quite some time, and it was created by the International Organization for Standardization. In addition, is the only one that offers companies a certification that validates their information security system. So just like you have organizations saying that they're PCI DSS compliant, you also have organizations saying that they're ISO 27001 compliant. Hence, an ISO 27001 certificate basically proves that an organization has met the information security standards of the ISO organization, and that's a pretty big deal. The standard were specifically designed to be used by organizations of different sizes and in all sectors anywhere in the world. Unlike the other frameworks, the ISO 27001 formally specifies a management system called Information Security Management System, which is intended to bring information security under management control. The Information Security Management System is a structured management approach to security and is designed to ensure the effective interaction of process, technology, and user behavior. Another unique feature of the ISO 27001 framework is the PDCA cycle. The PDCA stands for the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle, and this cycle is applied to all processes in the framework. Still in the ISO 27001, there are quite a number of similarities with the NIST cybersecurity framework, which I shall go ahead to talk about. The ISO framework, just like the NIST cybersecurity framework, is vendor neutral and technology independent. The great thing about the ISO and NIST frameworks is that they're both high-level management frameworks, not technical frameworks, and they're written in the language that management, especially senior management, can understand. The ISO 27001 framework requires management to identify the system's vulnerabilities, design appropriate information security controls, and put in place processes that ensures that the security controls meets the company's needs. In addition, both frameworks are highly scalable as they were designed with a modular structure, and companies that do not need certain controls by nature of their business can easily jettison the unneeded controls. Just like the NIST cybersecurity framework, the ISO 27001 adopts a risk-based approach which helps to customize security controls to the risk level of an organization. We can then see that there are quite a number of similarities between the ISO 27001 and the NIST cybersecurity framework. So let us talk more about the NIST cybersecurity framework. We've already outlined a couple of similarities with the ISO 27001. So let us delve deeper into the NIST cybersecurity framework. In order to improve critical cybersecurity, NIST, under directives from the White House, released a framework that helps organizations manage cybersecurity risks. The framework was basically targeted at organizations that were deemed to be critical infrastructure. But even though the framework was developed chiefly to mitigate risk in the US of A critical infrastructure, it can be used by any organization, regardless of size, because it was developed from the ground up with businesses in mind, although critical infrastructure, but it is highly scalable. So your average enterprise or a good old Main Street mom and pop store can use this framework. However, for small businesses, I would highly recommend the Small Business Security Framework that was developed by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, as it is much simpler to understand and definitely much easier to implement. It sort of takes a checkbox approach to IT security. For example, does a business have an antivirus? Yes, check. Does it have a firewall? Yes, check. So it's a pretty great resource, and it will be very useful for any small business that's looking at how to better improve their IT security. Okay, I digressed for a bit, so let's get back to NIST. The NIST cybersecurity framework is the only framework that was developed as a collaboration between the public and private sector. In fact, the ISO 27001 and SANS 20 Critical Security Controls Framework were amongst some of the many frameworks that were used as input in the development of the NIST Cyber Security Framework. The framework provides a core of activities to anticipate and mitigate against attacks on systems. Like the ISO 27001 framework is measurable, but in the case of NIST, the measurements are often used to gauge the degree of implementation of the core activities of the framework. Basically, the measurements act as a gauge to assess how secure an organization's information system is and its level of resilience against attacks. This is obviously a very useful metric for top-level management because, as the popular saying goes, if it can be measured, it can be managed. So the NIST cybersecurity framework has about 5 concurrent and continuous cores, which are identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover in that order. Everything about the management of an organization's IT security can basically be found in one of these 5 cores. Each core has several subcategories, and the entire core represents a set of recommended industry standards and guidelines that are common in cyber and critical infrastructure. So you see that the NIST cybersecurity framework has tiers which provides context on how an organization views cybersecurity risk and the process in place to manage that risk. The tier is named partial, risk informed, repeatable, and adaptive, and they reflect a progression from informal reactive responses to approaches that are agile and much more risk informed, which is basically the top of the food chain, and that's where you want your company to be. So the framework is also pretty unique by virtue of the fact that it encourages companies to create a profile to describe their current security states, and then describe the target state, which represents the desired security position. This enables firms to identify and prioritize areas of improvements that will bring them closer to their target state. So you've got a state saying, okay, this is where I am right now as a company, and you've got another state that is basically like, okay, this is my target state, and this is where I want to be, say, a couple of months or years or a couple of weeks. It all depends on the company. So we're spoken about the NIST cybersecurity framework. So we're now going to go and discuss about the SANS 20 critical security controls. So the SANS 20 critical security control was developed in response to an increased rate of cyber attacks. But unlike the NIST cyber security framework and the ISO 27001, the SANS security controls is not a management framework, but rather it's a technical framework. It prioritizes security functions, they're effective, with a stronger emphasis on what works. The emphasis is on security controls, where products, processes, and services have demonstrated real-world effectiveness. So the technical nature of the framework means that unlike the ISO 27001, the target audience of the framework is the IT department. Finally, the framework does not employ a risk management approach to cybersecurity, unlike ISO 27001 and CSF. The framework does definitely have its advantages, like, for example, it focuses on areas with high and immediate payoff for cybersecurity, it maximizes the use of automation, and is written in a language that can easily be understood by IT personnel. So now that we've looked at all 3 frameworks as promised and discussed their importance to business, which framework would I recommend? All the security frameworks we've discussed have their advantages and disadvantages. However, based on certain factors, I believe that the ISO 27001 framework offers the most advantages to large companies. Before we discuss the merits of the ISO 27001 framework, it should be noted that these frameworks, all the frameworks we discussed, are essentially blueprints, and companies should customize these frameworks to form their security strategy. However, you need to be careful not to dilute the standards during the customization process, as this will basically defeat the entire purpose. So the ISO 27001 framework is inarguably the most popular and widely used security framework in the world, and for good reason. It is the only auditable international security standard which defines the requirements for an information security management system. Among the standards we've looked at, the ISO 27001 framework is the only one that offers a certification confirming that an organization has been audited by an accredited body and it complies with the ISO 27001 standards. And the benefit of the ISO 27001 framework to companies is in the area of compliance. If an organization needs to comply with mandatory regulations, which is a very important requirement in most developed countries, the ISO 27001 framework provides a methodology that assists firms in doing this in a very efficient way. As earlier stated, the ISO 27001 framework is very scalable, as it can be used by almost any size of firm, ranging from up and pop stores to enterprise multinationals. In addition, it is currently used in a wide range of industries. Finally, the ISO 27001 framework enables senior management of large firms better understand the business. It also helps businesses define responsibilities, duties, and risks, which results in better and informed decision making. So that is all that I have today on security frameworks and their importance to businesses. I really do hope you guys learned a lot, because I absolutely enjoyed working this video. I absolutely enjoyed making this video. So see you later.